Mail-in ballot fraud. President Trump expressing concern the 2020 election could be, quote, rigged if widespread use of mail-in ballots is allowed. During my exclusive interview with AG Barr this weekend, he spoke about the potential dangers of mail-in ballots.
Well, there's a big discussion right now about mail-in voting. Hillary Clinton said it's fine, it's fair.
Well, it absolutely opens the floodgates to fraud. Those things are delivered into mailboxes. They can be taken out. There's questions about whether or not it even denies a secret ballot, because a lot of the states have you signing the outside of the envelope. So the person who opens the envelope will know how people voted. There's no, right now, a foreign country could print up tens of thousands of counterfeit ballots and be very hard for us to detect which was the right and which was the wrong ballot. So I think it can upset and undercut the confidence in the integrity of our elections. If anything, we should tighten them up right now.
Joining me right now is California Congressman, House Armed Services Committee member John Garamendi, and Florida Congressman, House Armed Services Committee member as well, and retired Lieutenant Colonel and Green Beret Michael Waltz. Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Maria.
Congressman Garamendi, let me kick it off with you. Get your reaction to AG Barr's comments on mail-in voting.
He's just wrong. We've had mail-in voting in California and Oregon and other states for years, and very little, if any, fraud at all. It works very, very well, and there's been no problem, no fraud, certainly in California and certainly not in Oregon. So I think he's wrong.
Congressman Waltz?
Yeah, I think we're talking past each other on this issue somewhat, Maria. Florida has mail-in, as do many other states, mail-in voting as well. The issue is when we're seeing states talking about mass ballot mailings to people that haven't requested them, to potentially to people who haven't even registered, to voter rolls that haven't been fully reconciled. And there are a number of cases, numerous cases of voter fraud, and it is a slippery slope. We just had one just last month in New Jersey where nearly 20% of the ballots were invalidated for ballot stuffing, for not having the appropriate signatures, for not matching voter rolls. There are studies showing Texas had over 27 accounts. There have been boxes of ballots found in Nevada where they had mass mailings. So it is a slippery slope if not controlled properly and not done properly. And I think that's what the President and the Attorney General are concerned about, and they are rightly concerned. And this is being done under the guise of Corona. You know, my position is if we can safely stand in line to go to the grocery store, if we can safely and civilly protest, then I think we can safely stand in line to vote as we've been doing the last several elections. And there needs to be a healthy mix, and there needs to be a healthy series of protocols in place to make sure that this is done properly.
Well, Michael, you're absolutely correct about this series of protocols. And also do keep in mind that standing in lines that wrap around 3 or 4 city blocks is not appropriate. So voting in person should be part of the process, as well as voting by mail. And, of course, the protocols do have to be in place. The issues that you cite are the issues of the protection. Yes, there are problems that occasionally occur, but the ability to check and cross-check the voter rolls and signatures and so forth, those all work. But we also must keep in place that people must have the opportunity to vote in person, and that requires that the counties and cities and states provide sufficient voting places so that people don't have to stand in line for hours upon hours.
Well, you heard what Darrell Issa said earlier, Congressman Garamendi, where basically, you know, there are areas where you're allowing voting 17 days after the election. What is that about? Why would you allow voting 17 days after an election?
I don't think that occurs anywhere. Those ballots have to be postmarked the day of the election. And in most cases, they have to, and so they cannot be 17 days. I think he's referring to counting. It does take extra days to count the mail-in ballots because they can be postmarked on the day of the election. And so that is obviously a concern. I know in California, our elections are not over for several days, in fact, even a month after the election, as those ballots arrive. Also, ballots arrive from overseas. The U.S. military has been voting by mail for years upon years, and those ballots always arrive late.
Yeah, Maria,
well,
the other issue and the other concern.
That's another issue, Michael Waltz. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the other concern, in addition to the 17 days after the election, is that anyone can go collect those ballots in unlimited numbers of ballots in California and in other states, right? So you can literally have an activist go into certain targeted neighborhoods to people they know haven't voted or will vote a certain way and collect as many ballots as they need after the election and then turn them in. They know on election night the target, and then they can essentially go win that election after the fact. And so it's the slippery slope that comes with additional laws being added on to the vote by mail that is really concerning.
Well, we can wake up with sounds in the night, but let's be very clear here that we have had vote by mail for years and years, and these problems simply do not exist. Yes, we do count the ballots late after the election, but they have to be in place.
He actually just named times when it did exist in New Jersey. I mean, Michael Waltz just said that it did in fact occur in New Jersey.
Just last month. That was just last month, Maria. This isn't from years ago. This was in May of 2020 in Paterson, New Jersey. And in California, John, we had 6 Republican seats that won on election night, but yet days later those leads tended to be eroded to the point that they didn't that they then lost. So I think there are some real issues and real concerns that we're all focused on. All focused on keeping the integrity of this election.
We certainly should do that, but let's be very clear. Those were legitimate ballots that were counted after the election night, and we know from even. There are ballots that are legitimately cast at polls that are often late in arriving for counting at the county or city. But your point is correct here. We must have a legitimate election. Vote by mail or vote in person. Either way, it has to be done legitimately.
That's what we all want. We want a legitimate election. All of us can agree on that. Congressman, thank you. John Garamendi
My pleasure.
and Michael Waltz. Great to see you both, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We will be